Education at Columbia University. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you will have served the last 4 years as Vice President, President-elect, President, and past President. Tell me about your experience and how have these roles impacted you?
I was mentioning this last night. I think that the overall impact is twofold. One, a great respect for all the leaders of the organization through our history. Doug Hesse mentioned in the opening sessions, this is our 105th convention. So over the years, I have a growing respect for all those people who have served. These are full-time employed people, they're teachers or professors, and giving of their time and energy and having a greater sense of what it takes. But I think I've also come away with a much greater love and respect for the members and what they go through, the same people who teach until 2:30 in Iowa and jump in a car with 5 of their colleagues and drive through the middle of the night to get here, and then they'll leave Sunday and get back at midnight and go back and teach. So a great respect for those people and what they do for kids and what they do for our profession.
To have these roles honed your advocacy skills, and if so, how?
I think that I have a much better understanding of who the various decision makers are in education and how they relate to the big picture. So part of our advocacy work, obviously, is going to Washington, D.C. and preparing through a series of conversations with normally their staffers for senators and representatives, a platform for our own members. So understanding what's happening at any given time on the Hill, how that our mission kind of fits into what's going on, how to communicate with them, how to be respectful of where they stand, how to talk with people who may differ from you. All those things I think are really important, but specifically understanding how big issues that matter to us kind of fit within the legislative workings. But I think we've also, in terms of our advocacy, gotten smarter and more mobilized around how to work at a local level, a grassroots level, a state level, a district level. Also how to work with the Department of Education, not just the House and the Senate.
Were you able to accomplish what you set out to do?
It's funny, at the very beginning, I think working with our executive director, Kent Williamson, becomes very clear that your agenda is the council. And I believe that some of the things that I wanted to do at a personal level, I can look back and say, yes, represent the council well, its history and its legacy, but also encourage us to have the courage to reinvent and renovate. So part of that is bringing English into the digital age, bringing English into the multicultural age, having the classroom be a critical space and a resistant space and not just a compliant space. And so I wouldn't necessarily say those are only my ideas. There are ideas of many of our members. I do think that we pushed in that trajectory. We've maintained our strength, the ties to our legacy. But just even going to the sessions today, I can see there is a new English, there is a different English. There's packed rooms to talk about HipHop or post-colonialism or multicultural young adult literature. The next convention is about advocacy. So when I think about that, and being a part of that long arc, it feels like I did what I set out to accomplish, but it's really a we. This is, I am in the middle of something, and the next president will be in the middle of something that came before us, and something that's going to hopefully continue long after us.
What do you feel was your greatest accomplishment?
I'm thinking of a couple of things. One, I'm convinced that there are emerging leaders who had their first role in the council under my leadership that will be future presidents of NCTV. And that feels good, like an accomplishment. And I can see them already, beginning to blossom. And, part of the work we do is leadership development. I also think having people excited and inspired about being English teachers and being excited and inspired to innovate in their classrooms and for the profession.
Your speech last year at the 2014 annual convention moved me to tears. You're so eloquent. Where did you learn to speak and write so that you move others?
I think that there are mentors from the grave. There are mentors in your life. My father's a preacher. And I think the rhetorical tradition is strong in the African American community, and to be powerful in how you speak. Outside of him, there's probably an amalgam of folks, but this idea that to be powerful as a scholar, you have to speak. I was very shy. I don't speak much around the house or in private conversation, but I do good on stage, and I'll do that. Um, the writing has been something that it's been very close to me my whole life, and the idea of being literate and using literacy as an act of freedom is a very old one in our tradition. So how do you write? Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, has a piece called it's committed literature as a larger piece. So part of it says why write. It's about being a writer to change the world. So it's not just to entertain, but it's to evoke. And so each of those are important. But I think at the end of the day, the prime motivator of both is an enduring love for your subject, whether it's a character in fiction or a play, or it's a topic of a poem. In this case, the future of English, as it relates to the teachers, as it relates to the students, as it relates to communities and societies, is something that evokes tremendous love in me, and I think that's the source of the words.
Well, continuing in your biography, you reveal your love of words and writing and their power.
Yeah.
And you said, quote, "Words are seeds in the vista. Words, at least revolutionary ones, are the source of revolutions, personal and societal. Those who have the command of language have more might than those who have the command of armies." So when you only look at some of the world's influential writings, the Magna Carta, the Gettysburg Address, Declaration of the Rights of Man, do you believe that writing is an effective form of advocacy? And tell me how you have employed writing to advocate.
So yes, part of it I think is your theory of change. So some people will look at, I talk about revolutions, and they'll look at the moment like the Boston Tea Party, right? Or when you're storming the Capitol. And those are important moments. But I think that those moments are after the real revolution happens. The real revolution is when you get ordinary people to believe in themselves and to believe in their collective agency. So that is, I think when you think about the power of writing and writers, you have a real possibility to invoke that spirit, and you can ignite human capital. And that, I believe, is the source of revolutions. And to be a strong writer and to get someone to read something and all of a sudden she sees herself in the world differently, she sees herself as a different actor in the world. To me, that's a true revolution. There were poets in the 70s, the last poets, and they talked about the revolution begins in the mind. Everyone is watching the revolution in the streets, but that revolution in the streets is only possible because the revolution began in people's minds. And a lot of that has to do with the words. It has to do with people who bring new ideas, who inspire people to greater senses of themselves. And that certainly is the case in my history.
Last year, you attended Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C., and I assume you've done others.
Yes.
Tell me about your experiences on Capitol Hill. What do you like about meeting with staff and representatives? What do you dislike about federal advocacy? And do you think this is effective to go down to Capitol Hill?
I do. I think it's effective. It's certainly a learning curve. So part of it over time is not feeling incompetent or ignorant, and learning to have confidence in what you know. At the same time, being willing to learn about how things operate. And depending on the people you interact with, there's a different kind of sensibility and understanding for that. Tolerance is probably not the right word, but they're probably on one extreme. You feel tolerated, and maybe even a little bit talked down to. Right? That who are you, and did you do your homework? And, so I think over time, though, we've learned to be better, understand the power of our own stories, but also I think finding that sweet spot, the intersection between the things I'm supposed to know something about, like the teaching of English, and the workings of Washington, D.C. So over time, you learn more about the latter, right? You never forget the former because it's who you are. So I think after 4 or 5 of them, I began to prepare myself better, to have a greater sense of kind of personal worth in that space, and a greater conviction and entitlement that we are quite technically your employers, and in the democratic process we need to be listened to. We are a mighty organization, and we have not only ideas, but we have living proof of the power of our convictions. And when you bring that into that space, I think that it's a more enjoyable experience. It's got to be nerve-wracking. You're a little bit out of your element. You know, we're like fish out of water when you're not in the classroom, not with students, or not with your nose in a book or at the laptop. You know, so it's gonna feel a little bit like, you know, writing with your offhand, right, or singing in a different key. So I wouldn't say it's completely comfortable, but I know that it's something that we need to do, right? I tell my students they have to speak the truth to power. If I'm going to ask a 15-year-old to do that, then someone 3 times their age, I need to have the courage to do that as well.
That's true. Well, speaking of your students, you teach HipHop at the university. Tell me about that, how the genesis of that, and how you found it to be an effective program.
It's funny, we had a session today, and I was talking to folks afterwards about hip-hop being the answer to a question. It's not the question itself. And so for me, it began with the answer to a question, and that is, how are the people I'm teaching engaging the world? When they're involved in a literate practice, that they're excited about what is that practice? There were other answers to that question in addition to hip-hop, but hip-hop is one of those answers. I found that it was the way that my students engaged the world. It was the way that they related. It was the way they learned about the world. It was the way they produced cultural knowledge and transmitted knowledge. It was a space where they felt good about themselves. They felt listened to and affirmed. So to me, it's about having an affirming pedagogy. It's about starting curriculum where the students are. It's about creating contexts where students can become not just consumers of the world, but powerful producers of the world through multiple languages and multiple modes. And I think that that's a true literate citizen, is someone who has a mastery of multiple modes of discourse and sees themselves as being a powerful communicator across multiple genres to multiple audiences for multiple purposes. And hip hop answers a lot of those questions.
I teach Jones's session.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Interesting. You've talked about the intersection of literacy, research, and political transformation. So tell me your experience with young people learning this way, and have they become engaged outside of their schools?
Yeah, so part of the work in the classrooms is getting young people to be engaged at that moment. You know, I think that there's multiple ways you can tell someone she matters, right? You can say, hey, Luann, you matter. Or you can put Luann in a situation where she knows that she matters. So it's not like, let's do the work so that you are prepared to engage the world. It's, let's have that work we do be engaging the world. It serves 2 major purposes. 1, you know you can do this. It's not an abstract. 2, we actually need young people now. We need their voices today. And so this idea of education is preparing you for some future. I wouldn't want to move completely away from that, because education is about academic and social futures, but it's also about an academic and social present. We try to do both of those. The world needs to hear these young people's voices, and the young people need to know that my voice matters.
On your website, you reference the NYS DREAM Act, Education Equity for Undocumented New Yorkers. Did you meet with policymakers on that, or did you just write about it? Tell me about that.
That work started with in Los Angeles, way before I came to New York, before there even was a DREAM Act. You know, the students that I worked with in LA were, I would say, they were instrumental in there being a DREAM Act with their civil unrest, and so that was the students that were participating in that. They came to New York were people that they were graduate students then, but I had been working with them since they were high school students in Los Angeles. So about a decade's worth of work. So it's definitely action on our part. These are real people whose lives are affected.
Did you meet with policymakers, write them, to students?
Yeah, so the part of that work was actually, we had a session with policymakers. The policymakers that won our session, state senators and assembly members, members of Congress, all supported the DREAM Act. So it wasn't necessarily convincing them of it, it was convincing them of something they were fighting for, and helping to strategize about how to make that happen. But I have to say, it's been a rocky road, but there's been more support than I think people imagine along the way for this. There's definitely an opposition out there, but there are a lot of policymakers at every level who've been supportive of this for many, many years.
Right. So under the website, under Taking Action, you have 3 links. One is a very moving poem. The second is about the IDEA program, and the third is Root Music Foundation. Can you talk about the latter two?
Oh, so
They
IDEA,
are.
yeah, IDEA is the Institute for Democracy, Education, and Access. So that was my former job for coming to New York.
Okay.
It's an institute at UCLA, and that's where we started a lot of this work with young people in communities in the late 90s. I worked there for a dozen years before coming out to Columbia. The Music Foundation was I used to run a record label.
You did?
Yes, and so our theme was music, love, and revolution. And I did many things. I was a professor and a writer and running this record label. But so part of it was how does the music itself, the production of the music, change the world? And the other part of it was an arts education focus more. How can these musicians kind of give back to young people and help young people to see themselves as becoming musicians who can change the world? So those are both elements of it.
Are you still doing both of those?
No. I had to give it the presidency of NCTE, and taking on this institute meant that I had to leave the record label behind.
You think you'll go back ever?
I don't know that I'll go back to that part of it. There's certainly a part of me that imagines a future in my life is focus on the production again, like the artistic production. But the business and administrative aspects of that work were that's a lot. It's a lot of work, and it's it's not remunerative. That's for sure. So with children now, and I have to be a kind of a better steward of the family finances than trying to run a record label.
You've written chapters regarding advocacy, like
Yes.
public engagement and public education, joining forces to revitalize democracy in equalized schools, and teachers as civics agents toward a critical democratic theory of urban teacher development. Any closing thoughts on education? Advocacy, as an educator?
It's something that I said last year, Lou. I hadn't planned to say, but it came out in my address about focusing on advocates as a foundation for advocacy. I think in the abstract, advocacy makes sense to a lot of teachers, but seeing themselves as advocates doesn't. It's almost like someone needs to do that. That's important stuff, right? So I think what I've learned is what's the pedagogy of the advocate? How do you take that person who's very comfortable in their classroom or very comfortable, with his own kids, and say, you know what, you too need to march on Washington, or you need to march to your state capitol, or into a school board meeting. So it's helping people understand they have a sense of worth, that they have a story to tell, helping them to be able to tell that story powerfully. Those are the things I think that matters. There are a lot of people who recognize injustice in the world, who are spaces for action. What they don't always recognize is that they too can be that powerful person. They too can speak the truth to power. So that's where my work is really focused now, on helping people to see themselves as advocates, whether a child or a parent or a teacher.
Well, thank you so much for your service and for talking to us today.
So thank you for your work, Luann. Thank you for having me.